Welcome to Gotta Run. This is Will Sanchez. I have two very, very special guests tonight. Their names are Lance Swenson and Todd Kelley. They are the founders of the Run Anyway Foundation. I first met them when I interviewed Esong Smith, and they made a cameo appearance. Well, that's great for you guys to. Are you guys going to?
Low five.
Wow, what a story. Running for those who cannot run for themselves. I am thrilled to welcome Lance and Todd to the TV show. Welcome, guys.
How are you?
Hey, thank you for having us.
Great. Let's get started because we got a lot to cover. First, Lance, introduce yourself. Where were you born? Something about your childhood.
All right, well, I was born in Ocean County, New Jersey, and my childhood, a lot of fun stuff happened. Always into sports, always a runner. When I was younger, I was much more of a sprinter, just like racing kids in the neighborhood or on the, at the school or whatever. For college, I went to Philadelphia Biblical University. I went there on a baseball scholarship. On my first year of college, I went to University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and that's where I met Todd.
So, Todd, let's jump into you. So,
yeah,
tell
great.
me about your
great
your
segue.
Yeah.
I was born in San Diego, California. I was raised in Maryland. I've actually lived in 7 different states, currently New Jersey. We met at University of Bridgeport 10 years ago. We've been best friends ever since. We got to start and run anyway about November of 2012.
Well, but before we jump into that, because we got a long show
Yeah,
here.
well,
Sorry.
not rush it.
Yeah, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
I can get behind that.
Okay. Well, let's go back to your childhood. So, as a kid, were you very actively involved?
Oh my goodness, I couldn't do enough. I think my grandmother sent me to boarding school because she couldn't afford to enroll me in any more sports programs any longer. So yeah, that worked out really well. I was always active.
Okay. Now, you have interesting looks. What's your background?
It does.
I'm Hawaiian, Native American, Spanish, and Irish. Yeah, it's quite a mix. I get this exotic look and then really white skin. It's pretty cool.
That's right.
Cool.
Your cuisine, you must like all kinds of food.
I like to try everything at least once. Absolutely.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, it's very interesting. Well, you guys made headlines back in 2012 when the New York City Marathon was canceled basically at the last minute, late Friday. And, well, tell us about it. Tell us what were you doing that day, Lance, and how did you come up with the Run Anyway Marathon, which is also known as the Marathon That Did?
That's right. Well, actually, when Todd and I were in Staten Island at the time, and we were hand delivering food to the families that lost their homes and had nothing all of a sudden. So we prepared food at our church, and we were bringing it to Staten Island, and all of a sudden my phone, I got like 6 text messages like back to back from different people, and then they all said, sorry, the marathon got canceled. And right away we were just like, we did all this training. I was the only one running it. We did all this training. Todd, he trained with me, like biking next to me and running next to me and stuff. And then we were talking, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna run it anyway. And Todd looked at me and goes, yeah, that sounds like you. Craig Williams, and my running mentor, he told me, he's like, well, why don't we do it like they used to do it and just run around Central Park? And I was like, that sounds like a way better idea. Yeah, let's do that. So we started doing that, and that night I went online to find like another running group that was doing it, because I'm like, I'm not the only one that had this idea. So I went online, couldn't find anything, and then I was like,
This is online meeting Friday night. This is less than 48 hours.
yeah, so
Well, most people were in shock. I don't think
Right.
you appreciate that your quick thinking was unusual.
Right, yeah, I guess that's true. I started it, and I wrote the message that said basically, hey, totally understand why the marathon was canceled, totally respect it and understand. But, for some of us that are running for charity, we need to run and finish what we started. We need to run anyway this marathon. So I actually was running for my uncle, my uncle's family. Back in April of 2012, my uncle passed away, Uncle Roy, from a brain tumor.
Sorry to hear that.
So thank you. And what's pretty cool is that this is him now. So he's literally the face of Run Anyway. And when I was doing the eulogy for Uncle Roy, I said that I don't know how, but this isn't going to be the end of Uncle Roy's life, still affecting people. Like somehow I'm going to do something good in his name. And then my dad spoke right after me, and he gave a great eulogy, and he said back in 1983, they ran the New York City Marathon together. And Uncle Roy did it on no training. And then they finished the New York City Marathon 1983 in 4 hours and 22 minutes. Cool. So I'm sitting in the church thinking, one day I'm going to enter the New York City Marathon, and I'm going to finish in 4 hours and 22 minutes, just like my dad and Uncle Roy did. And then a month out, I get a call from Craig Williams, and he says, he's like, hey, a spot opened up on our marathon team. Would you want to run? No one else will run with a month's notice. And I was like, yeah, like I'll do it, like absolutely. And he's like, have you ever run a marathon before? And I was like, no, but that's just a detail. Like I'll figure it out. So for the next 30 days, I just ran like crazy. Every day I would run until I was exhausted. And he was with me for a lot of them.
But he was on a bike.
He was on a bike, yeah.
I had just moved here. I was no way else to start running.
I reached out to a lot of my friends and said, hey, I'm running for a team ALS, but I also want to raise money for my uncle's family. So all the money I raised, I gave half to team ALS and then half to my uncle Roy's family. And so that's the charity I'm raising money for. And then when the marathon gets canceled, it's like, well, I've been training and I've been talking about this for a month and like just posting on Facebook and everyone's getting behind me and it's became like this whole thing. So I was like, hey, I have to do this. Like I have to do my miles. And I wasn't trying to get attention on me. Wasn't trying to do anything. But I wrote like, hey, I'm not the only one who was running for charity and needs to finish what they started. So that night, I made the group and he looks over at me. He's like, hey, did you just start this thing? And he was like, yeah. He's like, well, I'll be the first one. So then we went out to the movies. And then by the time we got done with the movies, we came back and there was like 70 people in the group. And I'm like, all right, that's kind of fun.
Friday night.
That was Friday night. The next morning I woke up and there was something like 230 people were in the group. I already had 2 messages from like newspapers saying, hey, can we interview you? And I'm like, oh man, this is a thing. Well, I kept getting phone calls, and then I got a message from Isang.
I saw that they had a plan. It was to raise money and supplies to bring down to the victims of the hurricane.
So we got on the phone, and she's like, hey, I'm good at these things. And I was like, great, I'm not good at any of those things. It's all like administrative stuff. And she's like, well...
He was an angel.
Yeah, and she was a total blessing. And she was like, well, so I made her an administrator of their page. And that night, it just got crazy.
Saturday night.
Saturday night.
No, the race is Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday.
Wait a minute. Let's back up because one of the big questions, when people showed up, 10 on the green, finish line, the new starting line for the marathon that did, you guys had shirts.
That's right.
And all sorts of collateral.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a Saturday night. You still would. So how did you get all this in less than 24 hours?
So the next, we're super busy. The next morning, after we launched, the morning I woke up, I called my sister and said, like, I think this just became something. And she's like, okay, well, what can I do? I was like, come up to Summit, but can you stop by Staples and get like these stickers made up? And then I went to down the road and I was like, hey, I need T-shirts. And can you make us T-shirts like right now? And they were like, no. And then I just tried to convince them. And eventually they said yes. And so we got T-shirts made up, and then I called my friend earlier in the day.
This is one of the T-shirts.
That's one of the T-shirts right there.
Wait a minute. So when did you go? Saturday?
Saturday morning, I went to the T-shirt place
and they made these in 12 hours.
Yeah. I think it might have. Yeah. I think it was actually in the afternoon because in the morning I messaged my friend. It's like, hey, can you make me a logo? And she's like, I have 15 minutes. I'll do something and send it to you. So she made that in 15 minutes, and I was like, beautiful. I love it. So I went to the T-shirt place and said, hey, can you give me T-shirts, as many as possible? And she's like, okay, well, we can do this, and but I have to charge you more. And I was like, yeah, whatever, yes, we'll do it. That sounds great. So we had T-shirts at the starting line.
Green was also the only color they could do it so quickly in, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
It's like green's the only one they had.
It's turned out to be a great green.
Yes, it did. It was great.
Perfect.
This is amazing. Like, this is just something that I wanted to do because I want to finish, what I started and run for Uncle Roy and, get some attention on him and just do some good. So in it, I said, hey, if you want to keep, supporting, doing some stuff that's good, bring a donation to the starting line, right? Bring money if you want to the starting line. And so by the time everything was done, we had 5 SUVs full of supplies. And people just kept bringing stuff. And then, thank God, New York City Roadrunners, they opened up a trailer for us, and we got to store everything. And then we brought everything down to Manhattan. And then we said, if you want, bring money, and we'll just give it away. So people are literally handing him cash and checks and just saying, here, take it, because they wanted to donate. And we didn't know that you're not supposed to do that. Like, you need permits and stuff for that.
You need a lot of permits.
We also didn't know you're not allowed to meet with more than 20 people in the park.
Yeah.
And we showed up with
thousands.
I know. So how did you work that out?
But we get there, there's already a crowd of people there. They already recognized me because I was on the Facebook page, and they're like, hey, Lance. And I was like, oh, hello. As soon as I got there, we started doing interviews, and then all these people started coming around us, and there's building crowds, and all of a sudden there's 100 plus, and then 200 plus, and 600 people are around us. So the New York City Central Park police come up to me, and I don't know who they were, so I just kind of dismissed them as yeah, whatever, we're trying to do something here. And I didn't realize that they had the power to like stop us or arrest us. Thank the Lord that Isang stepped in and actually has like people skills with authority and was able to talk to them and explain to what we were doing. And they're like, okay, you know, it's great what you're doing. And they're just like, just get some of these people out of here. Where I had a megaphone and I just announced like, hey, so whoever's here, we're going to take off in 3 minutes. Yeah, after the national anthem. And it's cool because people showed up in the New York City Marathon jersey, or they came up with their team or what they were sponsoring or like what they were raising money for, which was the coolest thing.
I was home following you guys online, and it was amazing because people were talking about you guys, and they were sending people, you know, people were getting messages. Oh, you know, I'm here with some Russian runners.
That's right.
Where can I go?
Yeah.
And they said, go to Central Park right away.
Yeah.
And other groups, a group from the Bronx, they met there and they said, let's hook up with the Run Anyway crowd up in Manhattan. So they ran from the Bronx to meet up with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And then there were people setting up aid stations ad hoc.
Yeah, which was great. Yeah. So what we wrote on the page was like, hey, obviously this marathon is going to be self-sufficient, you know, so bring enough food and water for yourself and then maybe one other person. It was such a cool grassroots movement. And like just runners helping out each other. Since we've run the Boston Marathon too, and the environment wasn't much different. Like people still lined up around Central Park and were still cheering us on.
You had a goal of running 4 hours and 22 minutes to honor your Uncle Roy and Dad. Yeah. Do you know what time you did on the Central Park?
What happened was I'd never run a marathon before. You know,
so I didn't know. For a month.
And I trained for a month, and the most I got to was 17 miles. And I'm like, I don't know what happens after 17 miles. So I ran with Craig. He paced me the entire time. He's at the time he'd done 3 New York City marathons. So his goal was to make sure I hit my goal. Craig looked at me and he just kind of nodded and he took off. So like he went ahead. So I had the last half mile to myself, which was perfect because it was super emotional and I cried most of the way and just thinking about my uncle. And it was a really special time. And I was looking at my watch thinking like, I think I'm going to get it. So I would speed up, and then I'd look down, and I'm like, okay, I got to slow down a little bit, so I'd slow down. And I was so nervous about hitting 4:23, because I would have considered that a failure. Like, I didn't hit it, that by the time I crossed the finish line where they were all I was 4 hours and 21 minutes and a few seconds. So I counted that as a victory, as hitting the same time.
I'm sure Uncle Roy was looking down from heaven on you. That's a very, very, very special moment. And where were you when this was happening?
I was at the finish line. I jogged in the last little bit with a giant sign that we had a bunch of people sign. I think the cool thing about it is that everything that we were doing was so identifiable. It was just everyone, even if they didn't show up with us, were like, yeah, like let me get with this run anyway, and let me cheer, and let me sign this poster, and let me support. It was really, really cool. We saw it as an opportunity to really help, and we saw an opportunity to like really contribute and provide something that wasn't available, and we just went out and knocked it out. Yeah. It was awesome.
And it was great. I knew that they would be there at the finish line, so high five Todd, and then my dad standing there, you know, Uncle Roy's brother, and I immediately just like fell into his arms, and right away he was like, so proud of you, Uncle Roy is so proud of you, and just, you know, emotions hit me, and I couldn't talk, one because I was emotional, and two because I was exhausted. And then there's photos of all of us at the end, and you can't really tell, but my dad's literally holding me up. Otherwise I would have just collapsed.
That's a great story, And then you decided, well, you know, how can we continue? I think because the Run Anyway didn't go away. Yeah. You created a foundation. So how did that happen?
Well, afterwards, we literally looked at each other and we're like, I think that we're absolutely silly if we don't continue this. Like,
but we didn't think like, hey, let's do something after. Yeah. So it was over.
You have your hands full. I mean,
we can only think of so much. Yeah.
You know, it isn't like the well-laid plans. This you live for the moment, and you let it come to you.
Absolutely.
Right. And then, hey, you know, in 35-hour span, we raised $16,000, and then we just gave it away. Yeah. It's like, what can we do if we kept this going? So, you know, we talked to some lawyers and people that were way smarter than us, and they're like, hey, turn it into, you know, foundations.
Oh, but maybe you do this on your church. You've been to Guatemala. You've been around the world to to help people that can't help themselves.
Yeah.
So what was the first official event that you did as a Run Anyway Foundation after the marathon?
We got a message from someone that said, "Hey, we saw what you did in New York City. Would you be willing to do that for the Boston Marathon?" And I was like,
Absolutely.
"Probably." What? Like, can we get into the Boston Marathon? And they're like, "If you do this, you can be in the Boston Marathon." And we're like, "Yes." Right away. So I came back to the apartment. I was like, "Hey, we're running the Boston Marathon." And he's like, "What? Oh, great. Like, let's do it." So
100%.
So we ended up raising $12,500 for charities in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And
Various charities, or one of the Pacific ones?
there was 2 charities that we raised. One was called Friendly Aid, and it's a great charity. I'm actually running for them again in this Boston Marathon. And they do all kind of like great stuff in the community. And then we also did one for Wellesley Theater Project, which helps like the youth in the town like come together and do like all these like cool projects. And there was 5 of us that ran for Run Anyway for them.
It was great.
Very ambitious, but now you had that experience with New York, so
Yeah, so I felt like a veteran, like running Boston. Still didn't know exactly what to expect, but loved the entire thing. So we ran together probably the first half mile of Boston.
first half mile.
First half mile. Because,
What happened after that?
Yeah,
I let him go.
he let me go because my
You only
pace
had
is
7 miles on the
Yeah.
So that was probably a smart move to be more conservative.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
and I knew I just wanted under 4 hours because I figured like that's my next
And
goal.
you just wanted to finish.
Exactly.
I actually, his dad was literally like, "So what is your time?" I was like, I just want to finish this
Yeah, just
thing.
make
Like,
it
I have
across.
no idea. I didn't want to make any predictions, and I was
Yeah.
actually really, really pleased with how everything turned out.
And I see my parents at mile 13. So I stop for 20 seconds, hug both my mom and my dad, and they're super happy. And they're, my mom says, "I'll see you at the finish line." And I was like, then at mile 14, my cousin Christian, who's Uncle Roy's son, his middle child, he actually jumps on the course with me and ran rogue for about 3 miles. So I'm running with all this emotion and getting so excited. I get to Heartbreak Hill and I fly up Heartbreak Hill. And I was like, that's it? Like, that's not that. I was surprised that Heartbreak Hill wasn't that impressive. Then all of a sudden I said to the guy next to me, I was like, that was it. I was like, that was great. And he goes, Heartbreak Hill's up there. And I'm like, oh no. And then I look and I see like this mountain looming in the distance. And I'm like, oh no. My phone rings. And it's Todd. And he goes, hey buddy, I'm going to pray for you right now. He literally prayed for me the entire way up Heartbreak Hill. And then he hangs up and he goes, I'll see you at the finish line. Mile 25, when I feel my hammy go. And thank God it was so fortunate that I actually got hurt right by a chiropractic school. And all the chiropractors were right there. And they're like, sit down, I know what to do. And they like massaged me out for like 30, 40 seconds. During the run, I have Roy written across my chest because instead of hearing my name, I loved hearing like, Roy! And that's just making me more emotional. I'm so excited. I finally see the finish line ahead of me. Across the finish line, and my goal was 4 hours. And I knew that I had started 10 minutes back in my corral. So the ticker actually said 4 hours. But since I started 10 minutes back, I finished the Boston Marathon 3 hours and 50 minutes, which was great. And I get a phone call from Dad, and he's like, I said, Dad, 350. And he was like, I'm so proud of you. Uncle Roy's proud of you again. We met, and I just hugged him over the barrier. And Dad, we got to get to the finish line to watch them finish. So I said, we got to go. And as we look, that's when we see the first bomb go off. And right away, Dad and I look at each other, and I'm like, I thought it was like some sort of like cannon, like, hey, this special runner finished.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought.
Todd, where were you at? You were still running?
I was behind. I was actually really impressed. I was following him on the tracker. I'm like, I'm only a couple miles behind him.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with myself. Like,
you're
I'm
still on
going
the
to
course.
catch up to him. Yeah, I was still on the course.
So-
Still on the course.
Me and Dad are the only people running, trying to get towards where all the people are now running from. And we're trying to get like weave through the people. And finally, Dad grabs me after we saw the second one go off also. Dad grabbed my shoulder. He's like, we have to go the other way. So reluctantly, I went the other way. And then I called Craig, who's following us online, and he picks up and he's like, hey, congratulations. And I was like, Craig, a bomb went off. What's going on? And I want to find all my friends. And he's like, don't worry. Last I checked, Todd he's far enough away that he wouldn't. It was like 2 miles away at the time. So he's like, don't worry. He's going to be okay. And I was like, okay. And then as I'm talking to him, I hang up, and then I call someone else, and the phones die because Boston shut off all the cell phones.
Yeah.
And that's like so super scary because we're so used to being so tied in.
Todd, let's pick it up from where you were. So you're a couple of miles away.
Yeah, I actually got stopped at the 25.2 mark. I was on the front wave because for the news to trickle down the course took a while. And so I was actually at the front wave of the first group of runners that got stopped. I was actually in the Sports Illustrated edition for being in the front of the group of people that were just milling around. And so a cop ran out and was like, hey, like holding up his arms, you know, stop. The race is over, which of course I looked at him like, you're out of your mind.
Right.
Like I'm like.
So they won't let you finish, right?
No, not at all.
So you're going to do it next year?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this year, 2014.
Boston and Boston Athletic Association have been, bar none, like 5 stars all the way across, and they, you know, have entrance for next year, which is just this year, which is great.
That is so cool. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to make sure we cover some of your future challenges.
Yeah.
So what's up new for the Run Anyway Foundation? You guys got anything lined up?
Yeah, we have a 5K that we're going to do in New Jersey, in Cranford, on May 17th. And it's for Contact We Care. It's a suicide prevention hotline for kids. So we're super excited about that. It's a great organization. And then another thing we're doing is we're running 450 miles. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to run from Massachusetts down to Arlington, Virginia. And it's for this amazing cause called Children of Fallen Patriots. They raise money for kids to go to college whose parents have died in the wars. Currently, I'm standing in a field of over 6,000 flags, each one representing someone who was killed in either Iraq or Afghanistan in the War on Terror. This relay is going to take about 4 days and 450 miles of running. So we're going to do it in stages, and we need you to help us. The stages will range between 6 and 11 miles. It's going to be one continuous event. Some legs will run all through the night. We've already determined the starting point and the end point of each stage, but you get to decide how to get there. Each leg of the relay is either going to start at, pass by, or end at a place of some sort of military significance. It might be a war memorial, a monument, a graveyard, or just some significant bridge that George Washington probably crossed over. We'll be passing through Concord, Greenwich, New York, Princeton, Philly, Baltimore, and DC. Check out 450forthefallen.org, like us on Facebook, maybe even think about donating, or come out and run a few miles with us as we carry dog tags from Massachusetts down to Arlington, Virginia, ending on Memorial Day. And it's a unique organization where the board covers all the expenses, so every dollar donated goes right to a kid's education. The statue that's their logo is in Concord, Massachusetts. It's the Minuteman statue. That's our starting point, and we're running down to Arlington National Cemetery. So that's where the 450 miles come from.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you so much, Will. Pleasure.
Thank you so much.